What y'all think, but I think that's pretty.
Okay, online folks, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I'm clear. Okay, good. All right, so we've got 2 more classes left. I've saved the most important thing for the end. So up to now, we've been talking about products and services and stuff like that. The next 2 sessions, we're going to talk about people. Because no matter how technology advances, and no matter how much technology takes over, which it is, it's still people running technology, people inventing the technology, and it's people using technology as a means to an end, right? So this course is about, the next 2 weeks, the next 2 sessions, we're going to talk about sales. So who in here would absolutely die before they went into sales? You're one. You two. What's your major?
Marketing.
You're marketing? Okay. Okay, so pay attention next 2 classes. You're here all the time, right? Pay attention. Who else would not want to be in sales? You raise your hand? Really? You would want to be in sales? I thought you would be. What do you want to do? Financial advisor, okay. Let me ask you a question, buddy. So what does a financial advisor do? Ah, very good, right? So next 2 days, we're going to talk about there's all kinds of different sales, right? And people, when you talk about sales, they think about a guy who comes up to them, opens up their jackets and selling watches, or a car salesman, you know. I hate to tell you, buddy, but you're going to be in sales. But you're going to be, and you'll get these next 2 days, because if you're in sales, you're in a more professional sales environment, and it's going to take different skills, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. So I'm going to leave you alone because, and you're in IT, right? So let's pick on you. And you can't see yourself in sales, right? Okay. You married? Huh?
No.
You got a girlfriend? No. You got friends?
Yeah.
Okay. You ever talk to them about doing something that they don't want to do? Okay. Parents?
Yeah.
Got parents?
Yeah.
So listen, we're all in sales. And people don't realize, anytime you get somebody to do something, that means you're in sales. Now, there's a difference in selling your parents on doing something. There's a difference between that and selling, Kennesaw State, my favorite chairs here. There's a big difference. But the thing about not being in sales is 2 things. One, we're always in sales. And the second thing is, even like in IT, there's IT sales people that make a fortune because their brain works in IT, but they've also got sales skills. So a lot of times, the people who make the lowest amount of money, believe it or not, are the people who really would never think they'd get into sales, but their expertise is in computers or some technology or whatever it is, and they're able to sell it or service it. And those are the people who become very successful. So I guess my point is, really a lot of stuff we're talking about the next 2 classes pertain pretty much no matter what your degree is or what you're going to do. And, I'm much more qualified to teach sales than I am marketing because of what I've done and what I'm doing. I take this pretty seriously. If you like to make money, so my son is 33 years old. He'll make 400 grand this year. And he started making about 250 grand when he was 27. And he's in sales. So he sells incentive programs. So what he does is he sells, his only customer is was SunTrust, but now it's Truist Bank, and he gets them to do incentive programs. It's called engagement. The employees feel better about their job, they stay longer, and it's a very sophisticated company, believe it or not, because they measure like a bank teller. If a bank teller is going to stay, the average bank teller say they stays 18 months. If they can get them to stay 20 months, they know exactly how much it costs a bank when the teller leaves. Because before the teller leaves, his production starts to suck. Then they leave and the job's open. Then they got to go find somebody else and they got to train them. By the whole time they're through, there's a cost there to the bank, and they've got all this stuff figured out. So my son deals with the CEO of the company on down, and he has been doing that for about 3 or 4 years. So if you're money motivated, which my son's definitely money motivated, but if you're money motivated, sales is a good place to go. If you're not money motivated, then it's not an issue. You know, if with all due respect for the guys who are going to be at accounting degrees, you're not going to make a fortune unless you open up your own business. You know, before you become a CPA or before you make a lot of money as an accountant, it's going to take a while. But accounting is it's a secure job. You'll almost always have a job. Accounting is to me, it's a great degree to get. It's a great job to have, but you better not be truly, super money motivated, because it's not going to happen. I mean, I'm not going to say it's very rare. It's much easier to make a lot of money in sales than not. And to my buddy's point over here, there's sales and there's sales. And we're going to talk the difference about traditional sales, like what I call strategic sales. And strategic sales is like what my son's doing. So it's good and bad. Like my son's got one account. If they're pissed off at him and he loses all the business, he's toast. But he has to know everybody from the janitor all the way up. That's a lot different than like his other buddy makes quite a bit of money and he calls 50 customers a day. So it's totally different. And my son used to call 50 customers a day. Like, you're getting into sales. I mean, there's a lot of sales jobs where you like he was selling software, and you guys, there's a lot of jobs in software. A lot of them are good, and a lot of them aren't. But he was selling software. His job was to call 50 customers cold. Hello, my name's Grayson Flame. This is who I work for. And you get, out of, I don't know, 500 calls, you might sell 1 or 2 people. And it's a numbers game. It's the same thing with stockbrokers. It's a lot of these guys, and you might get a little bit into that. The more you're going to sell. So in the game you're in, do you have a good work ethic? That's important. You have to have, and a lot of things in sales jobs, you got to work your ass off. So anyway, the people thing, I want to make a big deal out of that, because no matter what your degree is, or whether you get into sales or not, and believe me, I guarantee you there's a large percentage of this class who will end up in sales and don't even know it now. I mean, Malik's taken it in school, he's going to school for it. But a lot of people, I'm telling you, you watch. Mark my words, in 6 or 7 years, you're out there selling something. It's like, holy shit, I never thought I'd be doing this. So they've got these 2 days, then we got off, right? And then we've got the review, and then we've got the final. Okay, personal selling. So we talked about advertising and sales promotion versus personal selling. So personal selling is important if a product has a high value, if it's custom made, if it's a few customers, if it's technically complex, customers are concentrated. Advertising, sales, and promotion is a product at a low value, product standardized, there are many customers, simple to understand, and geographically dispersed. My water systems, which side do I lie on? Exactly. Why is that, Adam? Very good. It fits perfectly, right? So that's a good example. So I would like to send out a lot of marketing material to a bunch of customers, but I'd never sell anything if I could identify the customers. So that's an important distinction. So a lot of products are marketed on this side, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that. But we're going to be spending the next couple of days on is mostly this stuff. Most of the stuff that's on the left-hand column, and you have to have some sort of selling function in order to market your product. So let's talk about, I don't like this chart. I don't change it because I've shown this 2 or 3 times now. I'm going to call, instead of relationship selling and traditional selling, because relationship, let's say I'm going to call it traditional selling and strategic selling. First of all, what's a mean relationship? What is that? What does that mean? Relationship between who? That's right. That's right. So how do you build a relationship with a customer?
Start off.
Networking. That's right. We'll talk about that later on. That's good. What else? Trust. That's more of a personal thing, right? If you're selling software and you're making 50 calls a day, are you creating a relationship with a customer? Not well. Yeah. No, you're not. Right? You're letting the product sell. So. Again, it's not that one is better. I do think one's better than the other, but there's nothing wrong with being in traditional selling. But traditional selling is that job where you're making a lot of calls, and it's probably the selling that you guys have in your mind. Okay? But like when I was a coach, right? So I was a coach, I was in sales. I was in a sales job that had a lot of marketing, into it, and you have to be pretty good at marketing to be a good salesman at Coke. But basically, I was a sales guy, right? You know, my sales were, I think I told you guys, my sales were $360 or $370 million when I left. So that's not exactly the same thing as selling cars. So to have skills in this strategic selling, it's different skills. In traditional selling, you got to have work ethic, not worry about rejection, money motivated. You're not motivated by anything other than like accomplishments. It's totally results driven. Like if you're a person that, I'm going to talk about this later on, but if you're a person that likes to have recognition or likes to be part of a team or likes to feel good about the environment they're in, that's not where you want to be. So Malik, again, not to pick on you today, but the logistics thing you're talking about, without most of the salespeople in logistics, most of them are going to be up here. You know, in the industry, it's called dialing for dollars. That's what it's called. So you're either calling out a lot of people on the phone, or you're on a computer, going to Zoom, whatever. But the bottom line is, you're making a lot of. You know what cold calls are?
Mm-hmm.
What's a cold call, public class?
So would that be where you're just basically like you were saying, calling people, just you don't really talk to them, but you're just telling them about it. Just calling sometimes 100, 200, but it varies in time.
Okay, what's their relationship to you?
None.
None. That's what the cold part is, right? So if Tyler has bought a product that you're selling, and he tells Adam about the product, and Adam calls you, and you call Adam, that's not a cold sale. A cold sale is when you call Adam about some product, and he doesn't even know who the hell you are. That's tough. That's what a lot of sales jobs are. Now, so it takes skills to do this, especially the idea of rejection. Because if you don't like rejection, which I didn't, a lot of people, I think I would completely fail up here. I would suck at that stuff. And most of it is because rejection is not. I don't think I have taken it very well. So you got to be able to, somebody says no, you just go to the next one. But this is where I don't know if I'm going to say. I don't know if I'm going to say that as strategic selling makes more money, although I don't know. I mean, you can make more money on traditional selling. It's just a beatdown. So strategic selling is more risky because what happens with strategic selling is that you usually have 1 or 2 or 3 customers. Like in my last, when I left, I only had I had 5 account teams. So it's not that many for that much sales. But the skills are off the chart. So when you're calling 50 people a day, how good a skill do you have to be a problem solver? 0. How much creativity do you need? 0. How much interpersonal skills do you need? 0. How much understanding of the business do you need? 0. So when you're in strategic selling, like maybe what you're going to get into, maybe not at the ground level, but as you go ahead, when you start talking to bigger accounts, all that comes into play. So actually, if you look at skills of people, like problem solving, creativity, work ethic, analytical skills, blah, 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 that's what you need in strategic selling. But in traditional selling, you don't need a lot of that stuff. You just need to work your ass off and be okay with rejection. So and I hate to say this word, I'm not saying one's better than the other, and I hate to say the word talented, but usually if you can get into it, like I push my kid into it, if you can get into something like this, and you've got a broad range of skills, it's more professional, and you can get farther. Like for instance, to get promoted or to go to another company, somebody like Grayson is, if you have an another job, it's not going to be a problem. He could make that same amount of money selling software, and that's not what a lot of people are going to be looking for. Because in your jobs, you're going to find out once you start, and it doesn't matter whether you're in sales or not, they're going to look for a broad range of skills, right? Especially for somebody like you. You have to have a broad range of skills, man. So if you need a broad range of skills, you usually don't get that when you're making 50 calls a day. Okay, so that's a difference. So they call it relationship selling. The reason I don't like this is because in the good old days that Steve lived through, you know, a lot of sales were done at golf courses, strip joints, football games, places where women had a disadvantage, places where the decisions were made based probably not on the best, you know, Adam would sell to Malik because Adam and Malik are best buddies. Tyler's selling a product that's the same for cheaper. It doesn't matter because they're two buddies or because they go to football games or whatever place. He's dining them, they're getting drunk all the time. He does business with Malik. In the old days, like a lot of the old time salespeople, that was their best skill because they knew how to create this really strong relationship. But today, that's not really the case. It shouldn't be the case. Today, especially because there's so many women in the sales force, I think for the most part, corporate America tries to keep things so that women can operate in the business environment. Like even golf, for instance, most women don't golf. So I know we at Coke, at least the last 10 or 15 years, we were very, 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 sexual harassment, all that. I went to so many sexual harassment classes. It was unbelievable. First sexual harassment class I went through, they took middle managements for all over the world. There were like 40 people in there. So I was one of them. And sexual harassment was just starting to become a big deal. And it's like, I'll never forget this dude's up there talking, and there's 40 of us, and one of those chairs with wheels, not like this, chairs with wheels. And the guy gets up there and says, okay, this sexual harassment class we're going to talk about, and he tells a gay joke. Now, one of my best buddies was gay from LA, and he was in the class. And he was, like, I was sitting in the back where you are. He was sitting up here. So I couldn't see his reaction. I was so pissed off. So the guy, and I had no idea who this guy was. I didn't give a shit. So the first break comes. I'll never forget. I roll my chair to the back, and I said, "You think you're an expert on sexual harassment? And you start a course with a gay joke?" So that's how far we've come. So this whole relationship thing used to be much more. I'll give you another quick other story. This relationship used to be the driver. Drinking, golfing, sports, the couples going out all over the place. I took customers to England and Bahamas and Bermuda and Korea, and you just did stuff like that. And it was a great way to create a relationship. But then what happened around 2000, really, so it's like 20 years ago now. What happens whenever there's a problem? You guys know what the pendulum is? You guys ever hear that, what a pendulum is? You know what a pendulum is? Yeah, so when a problem's here and you try to fix the problem, they fix the problem too much. This is almost always the case, even with a relationship with a boyfriend or something. When you're complaining, when you have an argument or something, you want somebody to switch over here when the real solution's in the middle. So I guess a true story is that there was a store chain in Atlanta, it's no longer here, but they had stores all over the country called Cub Foods, and that was one of my accounts. And I got pretty close with the president. And I lived through this thing where, 1 year you're like partying your ass off, and the next year you get an email that says, you can't spend over $25, which I did. You can't spend over $25 with the customer. There's a big difference there. And I'll never forget, I went golfing with that guy. And we're sitting in a golf cart, and this cultural shift was going on in business maybe over 2 or 3 years. And he was big because his buyers, the people who worked for him were making decisions, again, more based on relationship than the actual, merits of the product or the price. So there were a lot of bad decisions made based on relationships that people had. Maybe a little bit of graft and bribery, although I never saw that, and we definitely never did that. I've never seen that, but I'm not going to say it doesn't happen. It was just more of a Wild Wild West mentality. So then, boom, everything changed. Walmart started. Walmart was the first one who said a vendor can't spend over $25 with us. So anybody calling on Walmart, like if you went to lunch with them, that was fine as long as you didn't spend over $25. Okay, so they started because I'm not going to go into what happened there. Probably not going to talk this class, but something happened there. And what happened was, boom, there it is. They thought that they were really in a bad shape with our relationships. So they told all the vendors, they swung all the way. You can't spend over $25. That's ridiculous. You can't go to lunch for $25. But see, they were making a point. So this relationship thing, the reason I talked about the president of Cub, and this is true, he felt, hey, listen, this idea of understanding, being a strategic seller and understanding the business and having those skills are great, but you can't do all that and not have a relationship with your customer. So his point was the pendulum swung from wild, wild west to, completely restrictive, and the real place to be is in the middle. So again, if you're going into sales, if you can find a job in the middle, that's where you need to be. You really don't want to go into a sales, if you can't help it. You don't want to go into a sales job that's completely restrictive. And the jobs that are crazy are far and few, but I guess now I'm out of the game. But from what I hear, there's a lot less of them. But you don't want to get in that environment either. So I went to interview at Seegers when I was your age. I was 25. I went to interview at Seegers in Chicago. The guy comes up. Do you guys know who W.C. Fields is? Ever heard of W.C. Fields? So W. Fields was, I think in the 50s, he was a comedian. And he had this big round head and this big red nose. Big red nose, looked like a clown. So I go to interview, and I go through the interview, and this guy comes out and I go, holy shit, he looks just like W.C. He had alcohol written right on his forehead. He's got this big red nose, and I'll never forget, and you guys would think this is good, but I was mature enough to think it wasn't good. He says, okay, I've interviewed 51 people, I'm offering you a job. I said, okay. He said, I just want to let you know, and I was a major drinker, huge drinker, massive. And so this would have been like a home run for me. He said, anytime you go to a bar, you can buy anybody you want, Seagram drinks that we'll pay for. So all my friends, me, would drink for free. Now that sounds good, but I was mature enough to think that's like a recipe for disaster for me. So I turned it down, but that's the idea of relationships. You go with your customer and get shit-faced. I cut $1 million deals on napkins, literally. I'm dealing with you. You're my customer. You're probably more drunk than I am, and I sell you on. Hey, we need that 4th of July ad. Hey, okay, well, I said we'll give you $1 million. Okay, take the napkin out, write it down. Cut Foods commits $1 million. And that's how some business is done. Today, none of that happens. Thank God. So the idea is to get into a job that has both of the elements, not one or the other. Okay, so traditional personal selling, this is kind of what I talked about from a skill standpoint. It's like strategic selling, sell advice, assistance, counsel, focus on customers' bottom line. The big thing about strategic selling, and my son's good at this, is when you're in traditional personal selling, you focus on closing sales. This is a really good line here. You focus on closing sales. So when my son was going to 50 accounts a day to sell the software package, he wanted to sell something and was focused on products. Strategic selling, and he made the leap. Strategic selling is you start thinking about customers. Because when you're doing strategic selling, you guys know what a win-win is? What's a win-win? Have you heard that? What's a win-win?
Both parties benefit.
Yeah, so any negotiation, right? It could be with your wife, it could be in business, it could be at church, it's sports, it doesn't matter. A win-win is when both sides benefit. You know how hard it is to do that? You have to be really skilled. But when you're in strategic selling, if you get a strategic selling, you get a relationship with customers, you got to have win-win. Because if you win once and the customer loses, and you've got a relationship with that dude, you just lost the relationship. Because you've pissed them off, you've taken advantage of them. And then you probably won't have a second chance. But if you're calling 50 people up a day, you don't care about that relationship. So these traditional, and I'm making these guys sound bad. I don't mean to make these traditional personal selling guys bad. It's just different skills. And I think I think it's a good test question. On the strategic selling, the big difference in strategic selling is you focus on the customer, where on personal selling, you're focusing on your product and closing. And the rest of that stuff all falls from that. Okay? Big difference, big difference. All right, selling process. So I like this chart. So this is steps in the selling process, right? So we talked about generating leads, qualifying leads, quoting customer needs, all that good stuff. So generating, what's a lead? What's a lead again? Did we talk about that already here? Logan, what's a lead?
It's something so you know possibly sell the product to this person.
Right.
It's more likely to
So
buy.
any potential customer is considered a lead, right? Okay, so how do you, so we're gonna talk about this, so I'll just go for sure. Let's talk about it. Generating leads, how do you do that? Qualifying leads. Let's talk about qualifying leads really quick. And I'm gonna bring this matrix up again. We've talked about like 3 or 4 times in this class again. I'm a sales guy, and I'm selling chairs, and I'm selling chairs to universities. Remember that matrix I did that said, you know, you got, let's say you got KSU, you got Georgia, you got Georgia State, you got Georgia Southern, right? And remember, it's the same thing with sales that we've talked about before in this class. So what you got to think of is, okay, KSU, I think they could buy 1,000 shares. Georgia, I think could buy 2,000 shares. Georgia State could buy 500, and Georgia Southern could buy 1,000. But that's one volume, right, or sales. That's one thing. What do we have to else look at? What's this count? Remember when I did that before? We've done that before. What else do we have to look at other than how much they could possibly buy? Very good. Very good, right? So you have to look at the volume, but you also have to look at the possibility of winning. So if KSU, the possibility was 20%, and these guys are 30%, and let's do this, 10%, and these guys are 40%, and these guys are 60%. This is exactly how it works when you're sales. It's exactly how it works. Who do you go after? Huh? Why is that? You got it, right? So we've done this before, right? So that you think the chances are pretty good at getting 600 there, right? So that's exactly, so when they talk about qualifying leads, there's a million things that go into that. We're going to talk about that. But to me, the biggest thing is chance of success, right? Chance of success. So yeah, you're right. In that case, you take the amount. Then you probe customer needs, you propose solutions, you handle objections, you close the sale, and then you do follow-up. Just spend a few minutes on this. All right, key selling stuff, generating leads, qualifying leads, probe leads, blah, blah, blah. They make the distinction here between strategic selling, and here they call it strategic selling. The difference between strategic selling and traditional selling. The generating leads is high with traditional, but it's low in strategic. Why is that? You have to be what?
You have fewer leads.
You have fewer leads, fewer what? Clients. Exactly right. That's right. So when you're traditional selling, you've got to figure out a way to find customers. When you're in strategic, that's good. One good thing about strategic selling is that usually the customers, you know, I was told what customers, and they had that obviously by code to some degree, but I was told what customers I had. I didn't have to go to Albertsons or Safeway and say, hey, I'm behind code. So qualifying leads is the opposite. Qualifying leads in traditional selling is low and strategic selling is high. Probing the needs, see where it's high right there in strategic selling, because when you're selling strategic, if you're focusing on the customers, understanding their needs is a huge issue, a huge challenge. It's the most important thing. Whereas in traditional selling, it's not that big of a deal because you're selling a product. Developing solutions, objections, closing the sale. Let's talk about closing the sale high and low. What's close the sale? What does that mean? Boom. Somebody says, I'm doing it. Okay, almost definite test question. What do you think is the hardest part of selling? Closing the sale. Why do you say that? Did I? Okay. Did I tell you guys that there's actually people who do that? We talked about that in this class? So there's actual big companies, several big companies do this. They've got people that say IBM, which is one of the companies that has it. IBM has a sales team, and they want to sell to KSU. They want to sell computers to KSU. So they're selling. So they have a KSU representative, and that representative goes through this whole rigmarole and goes through all the process and develops who you got to figure out to talk to. You know, do they need it? What products they need? Blah blah blah. And he does all kinds of groundwork and deals with the customer, everything else. But right before the close, new people come in. Because people, in order to close a sale, there's skills that you need. It's like an art. Like a lot of people talk too much. You'd be surprised, this happens all the time. Somebody will say, they'll give you like, it's called a buying signal, meaning they're wanting to buy something, and you just keep talking, boom, 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 boom. Well, if you're a good closer, somebody gives you a buying signal, you say, okay, thanks, sign here. You don't keep on talking and, get a chance to blow it. So closing the sale is, you're right, is the hardest skill in selling. And then follow-up is the last one. All right, generating leads. So advertising, obviously, right, is a way of generating leads. Most companies do that, especially companies that are selling to consumers. But even if you're selling to a business, you're advertising. You're trying to tell people how you can solve some of their problems, right? The publicity, direct mail, telemarketing. Don't we all love telemarketing? Cold calling, internet, referrals. What's a referral? Then what's a referral? Exactly. So the LED thing, we have not been able to do this to anywhere near what I thought would be how it could happen, but we're trying. The idea is if you put LED in this building down here, then they refer you to another building. And you don't have a cold call, then you've got a warm lead. But referrals are always good because they show credibility. Networking. All right. Andrew, you said that word. What is networking?
So it's pretty much going out and making the connection, meeting people, finding potential leads.
Okay. Who is scared of networking in this class? It scared me to death. So networking is, especially when you get older, Now my son's pretty good at it. He hasn't had to be really good at it. But my daughter, I told you guys how my daughter got her first job. Wanted to go to movies, and the movie association in Atlanta was holding this convention thing, and she walked right in this room with hundreds of people, didn't know anybody. Said hello to a few people, blah, blah, blah. One thing led to another, she got some cards, and that's how she got her first job. I wouldn't do that if you held a gun in my head. That's not me. I actually didn't like networking events really at Coke. Networking is a skill, but it's the people thing. So I got a million examples, but just today. So today, to sell, what we're doing was we're dealing with the Bears, the Texans, the Falcons. We're dealing with these professional football teams and this media scrub thing. But in order to make the company a bigger deal, in order to make it more valuable, we're trying, and me specifically, to bring it to businesses and government. I don't know anybody. So what you do is you start calling, you're talking to your buddies. And I talk to you, and this happens every day with me. I talk to you, and I can tell you what you're doing. And I said, you know what? You know her, and she's some big shot at some company. I'd really like to talk to her about this social media scrubbing. She doesn't know me from Adam, but she's buddies with you. So you call her for me, and you set me up. So networking has to do with utilizing your network of people to sell something. But it's also a way to get a job. So for those of you guys who are trying to get jobs, when my daughter went to get her job, she had this gigantic spreadsheet. I was just so impressed of all the people she met, all the people she talked to, what they said, when she should follow up. That's networking. And so, and you guys probably almost nobody here realizes it yet. But you will realize, again, no matter how much technology advances, how much you think your phone is a big deal, or your laptop, and it is, and it's going to become a bigger deal, I got it. But it's people that run the show. It's people that do everything. So networking means, and it's hard if you're introverted, really hard. You guys know what introvert and extrovert is? Does anybody not know what it is? My marketing buddy, what's introverted?
I like being more self.
That's exactly right. What's extrovert then? It's the opposite. That's right. You guys are just terms, right? So especially if you're introverted, it's hard to network. But never, no matter what your job is, I don't care what you do, never underestimate the power of people. And having a lot of people to talk to and knowing a lot of people, you know, how often have you heard this? Oh, geez, he got that, or he or she got that job because she knows somebody or he knows somebody, right? What do you think that is? Networking, yeah. Yeah, Rashad.
Well, my best friend in Jamaica, her mom was the manager for a insurance company, and they had internships every summer. I applied for the internship, and the big boss lady of the whole company called me and said I wasn't getting it, or I would get it like in August instead of July. And I had 2 jobs I was trying to work out, so I called my best friend's mom, who was like a store manager. You had the big lady and then you had the store. So I called her and I told her. I didn't know anything was gonna happen, but she said, all right, I'll see what I can do. And then the next day, the whole company gave me a call and said, all right.
Yeah. Now, Rashad, you know what the important thing is there? You thought about doing it. See, most people don't think that way. And I'll give you, and there's a guy I've known for 35 years who still works sort of for me. He does. He works for me in the water company. His dad was, you guys know Quaker Oats? His dad's president of Quaker Oats. And Ben, when his dad was president, they had Gatorade. It was a massive company. And what he did, Malik, is he went into logistics business. And he sold trucking time. So he would call, he worked for a trucking company, and he'd go door to door calling on companies to get them to use their trucks to ship shit, right? His dad's the president of Quaker Oats. You think he should have had a job like that? But he still works for me today. Now, he's got a lot of money because his dad gave him a lot of money. But he still works for me today because he would not ask his dad he wouldn't ask him to pick up nothing. He wouldn't ask his dad for any favor whatsoever because he wanted to do it on his own. So people don't think that way. You have to think about, and it's hard. It's not easy to do because most people say, oh, I don't want to bother somebody, or I don't want to look like I'm begging, or blah, blah, blah. This is how business gets done, especially when you get older, and especially if you get better jobs. Price, all that shit is secondary. Totally secondary. Relationships and the ability to know people and a network on how to get business done is the way things work. And today it works today. It works like this today. 50 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years from now, it's going to still be the same thing. So that's a good example, though. And when my daughter has a good example. So society did networking, not the easiest thing to do. You know, who is not on LinkedIn? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. You're terrible. You're all 3 terrible. You all 3 should be on LinkedIn. Who should not be on LinkedIn? Nobody. You guys all on LinkedIn? Just that? You all on LinkedIn? Adam, you in LinkedIn? What's that? You're either yes or no. You're not like slightly pregnant, dude. You're either on or you're not. Huh?
Yes, but no. Not for those purposes.
Not for what?
Not for those purposes. Like, yes, but no.
Okay. So you don't use LinkedIn? Social, right, social. So it's not for business purposes.
No, I do to know the people I'm working with.
Okay.
I'll
So you
look them
guys,
all up.
I don't care what jobs you're in. You guys are both IT, right? Get on LinkedIn. You'll never know 2 years from now, you're gonna be someplace working and he's messing around somewhere. And all of a sudden, he sees you on LinkedIn, you communicate, you end up getting him a job. Or you end up getting, it happens a million times a day. So everybody who's not on LinkedIn, you love LinkedIn. So everybody who's not LinkedIn, I don't care how introverted you are or extroverted you are, it doesn't make a difference. You must get on it. Because I'm on it, but I'm like you. I'm on it and I go on it once every 3 months. I'm old. I'm done. You guys aren't done. You guys are just starting. So LinkedIn is a very valuable tool, and that will help you network. Because before you know it, you'll be talking to people with like interests, like jobs, who've had the same problems you've had, right? And you can talk through it. So networking, LinkedIn is just one way of doing it. But networking is important. Trade shows and conventions. Has anybody been to a trade show? My classes never know what those are. Do you guys know what trade shows are?
There's like, my dad does like golf trade shows. He goes there and like all these people who sell golf products go there and they sell to like pro shops and everyone like a bunch of people who are interested in that come to it, and it's just a great way to network and sell your product and like get your new products out there and.
Okay, yes, but not for this class. So here's the difference, John, you're right. For this class, and usually in business, when they say the same trade shows, let's talk about golf. Yeah, I mean, you and Jillian can talk about this.
They should talk about the one in Orange County.
What's that?
Are you talking about the one in Orange County that they host teach you?
I'm not, my dad does a bunch of them.
They do a big one in Florida. It's like a showcase of all the products they have coming up.
Wait, so who's there? Who's showing their products?
Sales representatives from the top companies.
Great, so golf companies will go to these trade shows. They didn't do it last year because of the pandemic, but this is a massive. And the golf, in this case, golf, all the golf companies will be there. They have gigantic booths and they'll show their products. Here's the difference with what you said, Julie. Who attends those?
Either representatives or up and coming new companies like the presidents of.
Well, they'll be in the booth, right? They're the ones displaying, but who actually attends the shows? Consumers.
Yeah, consumers, yeah.
No, who attends the shows? Dick's, Amazon.
That's what I mean.
Oh,
Business to
okay.
business
Okay,
consumers.
yeah, so it's
Yeah,
not,
businesses that are going to buy that product, yeah.
right, so that's right, Adam. So trade shows are attended by businesses, we're saying it, businesses who are gonna buy that product. There's consumer trade shows and there's trade shows. In this class, for a test, a trade show is not for consumers. A trade show is when manufacturers set up their booths, check booths 5 times the size of this room, and they got other products in there, and people are gonna buy their products not consumers, retailers, wholesalers, whoever, companies, whoever it is. Okay, so trade shows obviously is, the reason we do trade shows is because you're exposing your products to a broad audience. So generating leads at trade shows and conventions, this is a story as old as time. And a lot of stuff happens at trade shows to get people to booths. I'm not gonna go into that. There's a whole art to doing trade shows, but that's a gigantic way of doing leads. And obviously company records, who's bought the products before, blah, blah, blah. So that's all way of generating leads. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, so referral is a recommendation to a customer or business associate, like I was talking to 3 guys in the back. So my buddy, I got a call tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, you guys ever heard of Carter's? Or Oshkosh, Bagosh, Carter's? You guys know what Carter's is? The kids closed. So I'm talking to the CFO of Carter's tomorrow morning. Okay. Now, so my son's godfather, a guy named Jim, and you got Steve. Do you think I have any idea who the CFO of Carter's is? I have no idea. I don't know anything about Carter's, nothing. Jim, however, happens to be best friends with the CFO. Jim's my son's godfather. So I called Jim up. I said, Jim, you need me to get in front of the CFO. He says, no problem. What does Jim make? Jim makes a referral fee. So I'll pay Jim 10% of the sale. And that's how it works. You guys got that? Yeah.
What if you don't make the sale?
He doesn't get anything.
He has to be confident. He's referred.
Well, listen, he's taking a risk. So say I'm a Jamal, say he doesn't, I don't know, say I'm not professional or do something I shouldn't do or whatever. Tomorrow morning, it's called at 9:30. Say I do something stupid. How does that reflect on Jim? Not good. So, I'm kind of blowing through this, but the whole referral thing, anybody who refers you is taking a risk, because if you don't want to do something stupid that's going to damage your relationship with them. But especially with small companies, that's how business is done. Any questions on that? Okay. So networking, processifying, like I guess we talked about a lot. So recognizing need, buying power, receptivity, and accessibility, qualifying leads. Okay, you guys, what did I talk about? I know I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. A good salesperson, when you're talking to somebody, remember, I think I use the chairs again. So if somebody at Kennesaw calls up a chair manufacturer and says, I need 1,000 chairs. That guy's already recognized his need. The guy in Kennesaw, right, whoever called me to call, he's already recognized the need for the chairs, right? That's easy. What did I say good salesman do when Kennesaw doesn't know they need chairs? What's that called? Very good, right? So identifying the gap. There's two things, right, when it comes to recognizing needs. One is the customer you're calling on has called you and said, I need chairs. The other thing is you identify or create a gap. Identify or create a gap. You know that social networking thing? Which one do you think? In the social networking thing, and we talk to a customer about what we do. What's the chances of them thinking that they need this product? They've not even thought about it. So what do we have to do as salespeople?
Tell them why.
Exactly. We got to tell them what they're going to do when they use the product and why they should use it. That's called creating a gap or identifying a gap. The people we talk to, like we're going to Iowa, the people we're talking to in Iowa, unless we've called them, they would have no idea who we are and what we do, what the value is. Financial planner, same thing. You have to create. It sounds like the word like unethical, but it's not. It's making somebody understand that what you can do for them is the product or service can help them, and they become better for it. And they just were ignorant about the product. And with financial planning, you're going to come across that every day. Like for instance, if you dealt with my wife is terrible at numbers. My wife knows nothing about money, nothing, zero. I could have all my money in the Grand Caymans and she had no idea. No, not a dollar. But if you were dealing with her, you would have to tell her why she should have a financial planner. What's the need? What do you do that's so great? And she wouldn't even realize that, hey, you know what? With you, I'm going to make 10% a year. Let's just make it up. But if I don't have you, I'm going to make 2% a year. Well, then you create the gap, right? And you made your money. So you're gonna hit that you're gonna find that in your job every day if you end up in that field. So you have to the customer you're dealing with either has to voice a need for the chairs. I need 1,000 chairs, or somebody from the chair company goes to Kennesaw State and says, "Holy shit, Georgia Southern just bought 1,000 of these really cool chairs. This is what they look at. They're comfortable. Blah blah blah." And the guy at Kennesaw State says, "Well, you're right. Our chairs aren't comfortable. They're not the good color. Whatever it is, I'll take 1,000." Obviously, making it simple. But recognizing needs is an important part of qualifying leads. Buying power. There's a phrase I can't tell you guys. That's what it never say class. But there's a phrase when you talk about buying power. What happens is a lot of times you talk to customers and they basically, especially when you're dealing internationally, like in Asia. When I was dealing in Asia. So Asians as a culture, you know what saving face is? You guys ever heard that term? Well, have you heard that term? Yeah. What's that mean?
I'm trying to, I don't know, protect your image.
Oh, great. Saving face is about protecting a personal image. And Asians are, this isn't a racist thing, it's just a cultural thing. They're very big on making sure their personal image gets protected. So you could be selling something to an Asian for a year, and they have a hard time telling you no, because it's against their culture. Yeah, so they give you like hints, and you got to read between the lines. So you can spend like a year, 2 years, whatever it's going to be, and you're going right down the road thinking you're going to sell this dude something, or this woman something great, and they have no intention of buying, none, zero. I run into that a lot with my LED lights, because people don't. They could be friends I'm talking to, or they could be friends of friends, or whatever. They have a hard time saying no. So this idea of buying power, when you're qualifying a lead, you need to make sure the people that you're talking to actually they can buy something, right? And they got the authority to buy something. Because the other issue is a lot of people pretend. A lot of people pretend that they're the decision maker when they're not. So all that stuff, I mean, I'm blowing through it. it's an art determining whether you're talking to the right person. And then receptivity and accessibility is receptivity, accessibility is somebody gonna listen to your message, and can you even get to them to say the message? Right, so if you're selling, let's go back to financial planning. If you're selling financial planning services, and let's talk about my wife. In order to sell, if I die, and you're gonna try to sell my wife financial services, one, how does she get receptive to the idea? And two, how do you even get to my wife? So that's part of generating leads. Okay, you guys got that? So that's basic stuff. All right, so there's something called a pre-approach. So does this happen a lot? Where would this happen? Traditional strategic selling, that there would be a pre-approach process. Exactly. Why would it not be traditional?
Because the traditional is
Right, and you don't have a relationship with the customer. So there's not really a lot of thinking with traditional selling, to be honest with you. But when you're doing strategic sales, I'll talk about my son, or if he gets the financial planning or some sort of bigger job, this stuff all happens before you even make a call to the customer. Right, so the pre-approach process is look, it's important, obviously, to know your product or service, but that's like a little piece of the puzzle. I mean, you gotta know about product and service, but if you don't know about your customer, like, again, the chairs at Kennesaw, why would Kennesaw State buy chairs? You need to know that. You can know everything there is about that chair, everything you need to know about the chair. But that doesn't mean you're not gonna sell anything if you don't know about your customers, your competition, or the industry. So knowing about the customers is knowing about, what gap do they have, or what need do they have, or why would they buy, or blah, or who's making the decision, blah, blah, blah. I mean, in strategic selling, you spend almost all your time here. Understanding the customer, understanding their strategic, vision. Okay, example, selling LED lights. So we sell LED lights, we make a proposal. I've got two columns on my proposal. I got an A column and a B column. All right? The A column is if we just replace the lights, it costs $100,000. The B column is if we replace the lights and the fixtures, $200,000. But these lights last twice as long, and they have less CO2, less heat, they're just way better lights. So why do I do that? Why do I have two options? Why would I have two options? That's kind of a question. Why would I have two options? Why would I have two options, you think? Why is that? You're right. You are exactly right. Why would that be? Did you hear what we said? Some customers are going to want to spend less now. Why would that be? That's all awesome answers. What else? A big thing? That's right. The biggest thing is their financial condition. So let's go to Carter's. What called tomorrow Carter's. So Carter's has got 800 stores right now in a 1 million square foot warehouse, and they're going to close 200 stores in the next year. Retail sucks. Right? Retail's in trouble. They're going to have 600 left, 600 stores left. If you know a store's going to close in 3 years, do you care if the lights last twice as long? No, because these lights last 5 years. Right? So the financial, and what happens is, but as soon as you put either one of these in, the savings is the same. Right? So let's talk about Carter's. So if Carter's in one of their stores does LED lights, say they save $1,000, we replace the bulb. If they replace the fixtures, they may save $1,100 at the most. Or about the same. So if they're going to sell the company, right? Or if they're trying to look good to the stock market, and they don't give a shit about long-term how they look, but they need to look good near-term, they will spend a small amount of money and get basically the same benefit. And we do this is a big deal with us, because if you're talking to somebody who owns a business, for instance, what do you think mostly they are? You think? They own a business. Okay, that's good. Why do you say that? What are you looking at? Go ahead.
Because they just made all this money to allocate their resources.
Awesome. That's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is I'm a CFO for a big company. Okay? In 5 years, where do you think I'll be? Another company. Another job. In 5 years, where did that dude who just bought a business, where do you think he'll be? Same spot. So what happens more often, you're right. And I probably should have prefaced it, saying resources weren't an issue, money wasn't an issue, which I should have said that. If money's not an issue, for the most part, somebody who owns a business, they're gonna be over here because they're in for the long term. And over the long term, they'll make way more money over here. But if you're selling the company, or you're at a company and you're making a decision, you're not gonna be there for a long time. I'm not spending all this money for long-term gain. It's sort of like sports, right? If there's teams that are gonna draft next Thursday, you know this, like the Bears, who are short-term, they're in trouble. If they don't win next year, they're toast. They're gonna fire everyone. So what do you think they're gonna do on draft day? They're not gonna take they're not gonna draft some guys who'll be good in 3 years. They're gonna draft someone who's gonna be good this year. Same thing in business. You guys got that? Plus what you said, how much money they got and all that stuff is important. But we find that that's why we do the 2 times. So anyway, so I guess the reason I bring that up is that's part of knowing your customers, right? And knowing your competition industry, that's all. That goes without saying. All right, any questions on that? Needs, a determination of customer specific needs and wants and the range of options the customer has for satisfying them. One of the beauties, if you go to sell, again, financial planning is going to be the case. You're not selling, like financial planning in a lot of places, you're not selling a product. You might have 10, 12, 15, 30 things you can choose. So if you're a strategic seller and you know the customer's situation, you can say, hey, you should do A, L, and Z. And then you go to the next customer and they're going to go B, G, and D. So knowing the customer and having a wide range of options, the best thing to do is, and this is, I'm not lying, but I'm pushing the envelope a little bit. On our L&D company, we have 6 manufacturers we rep. So one of the things that when we talk to customers that we have an advantage is somebody who's working for almost most people, they're selling Philips lighting. So when they want to replace these bulbs, they're going to put a Philips lighting bulb in. If I go to Kennesaw, I've got 6, 7 different manufacturers that make different types of bulbs, different types of prices, different types of technology. And what I tell the customer, which is kind of true, is that we pick the bulbs specific for their unique challenges. So there's a big benefit when again, financial planning, this is 100% true. It's good to have options for a customer rather than being prescriptive in terms of what they're going to buy. Because you want to sell the customer what's good for them, not necessarily what you sell. Okay? So that's all part of needs recognition. Okay. Sales proposal, sales presentation. Okay. Sales proposal, sales presentation. That's what sales proposal is, right? So sales presentation. This is what I want to talk about. Boy, oh boy, you guys. Who is scared of oral presentations in here? Yeah, anybody? 3 amigos? All 3 of you guys good with that? You are? You're scared, Jillian, of it too, a little bit? You're scared of it too? So I haven't talked to you for a while. What's your name? Marielle. So so did you ever hear you probably haven't, you know what the thing people are most afraid of in the United States? Beth. Beth.
But it's second.
Exactly. Second thing is public speaking. So they've got public speaking courses in here, right? At KSU? It's elective, I assume, right? Oh, really? Okay, so part, well, that makes sense. But if you're not in communications, do you have to take it? Huh?
You like,
It's elective. Everybody here should take it. No matter how introverted you are, no matter if you're going to be an accountant, an engineer, it doesn't make any difference. Because say you get a job in IT and you're 23, 24 years old and you start on this job. By the time you're 30, you're a manager in this job. Now you're managing 6 people. You know what one of your roles is? One of your roles is presenting either to your team or presenting to their bosses. So you're going to present no matter what. People think this is just sales and marketing. That's bullshit. That's every job. You need to know how to present. And it's terrifying for people. We at Coke, because we did so many presentations right out of the box, we had a ton of training on this stuff. We were videotaping. They spent a lot of time trying to teach us how to do this. So, because, and I was one of them, I was scared. I'd never really done it in the jobs before that. Being able to public speak and to speak in front of a group, you guys, I'm telling you, and I guarantee you 75% of this hates to do it, would never do it. You know, the project you guys are doing, when I used to have 30 people in my class, I had to deal with a team, which unfortunately had to stop. But when I had 30 people in the class, I made people present the presentation. Holy cow. People were dying. And I did it on purpose because the more you can die in here, maybe the less you're going to die later on. Because a lot of people find that they can do it, but they're too scared to take the first step. Anybody like cats? Who's a big cat guy? You a big cat guy? I hope you don't get offended by this story. I got to tell you a story. I'm so proud of myself. So you could hear a pin drop. It would be just about the size of this class, maybe a few people, and say the 5 of you come up, and now you're going to present to the whole class your presentation. You're emailing it to me back in the good old days that people would present it. So yeah, I mean, it was tense. I'm in back taking notes, and people are freaking out. They don't want to talk, and I can look at the people lined up, and the sweat's coming down their bra. You know, they got to come up there and talk 2 minutes. So they're talking about Habitat for Humanity, and no, not Habitat for Humanity. It was an animal shelter they were doing. I forgot which one it was. I can't remember. This girl comes up and she says, "Hey, in Atlanta, if we were to spay and neuter all cats in Atlanta, we would have like 140,000 less cats." And I'm telling you, get her a pin drop. She's talking. I yelled from the back of the room, "How many microwaves are there in Atlanta?" You get that? I hate cats. So you guys didn't get it. They were crying. They were laughing so hard. And I think part of it was because it was so stressful. But this idea, so much. So anyway, so being a presenter is important. Being well prepared. There's same thing for your tests. Is there a thing about being too prepared for a test? And what happens when you're too prepared? Yeah. Why do you have trouble with it? Psych yourself out. What else?
He took the words out.
Okay, psych yourself out. That's a good thing. What else? Overload, too much in your mind. Same thing with your presentations. So the thought is, this is kind of interesting. The thought is, and I think this was definitely the case with me, is actually when you did big presentations, you need to be slightly nervous. And I mean like that much nervous, slightly nervous, because it keeps you like you get adrenaline going. And you keep on like on edge, you know what I mean? You're sharp. If you prepare too much, and I think it's like this for the test too, definitely like the presentation, you get psyched out, you start to worry, you stress and you overthink things. So there is, in my opinion, there is a chance of being too well prepared. So but you got to be well prepared. I don't think anybody in this class has this problem though, to be honest with you. My daughter had to learn this. I had to teach my daughter eye contact. You guys know on your interview, when you go to your job interview, most of you are really good at this. I think you're all very good, actually. If when you have that interview, you look at that freaking person in the face. You don't look down, you don't look up, you don't look around, you don't look like you're nervous, right? You look directly at them. So this eye contact, when you're doing presentations, like we were taught at Coke, and I do it pretty good now, but I'm getting more lazy. Like when you do presentations, the thought is, I look at you, Logan, for like a second to two. You make direct contact, and I go from you to Craig. And I make correct, and I go back to Adam. So you spend like a second to two with each person because you're trying to dial them in. It's not like I'm looking at the exit sign, or it's not like I'm looking down. You try to look at people to try to get them involved. And the science behind it is if I look at Rashad for a second to two and don't go back to him for like 10 or 12 minutes, he's still paying attention. If I never look at Rashad, he could be out there, man. Not paying attention, doesn't give a shit, daydreaming, blah, blah, blah. So the idea is to try to look at everybody for a second or two. Yeah.
So I had a virtual interview the other day.
Yep.
We were talking about it, and one thing that a piece of advice that was given to me about eye contact virtually, make sure you're looking not at the screen, at the person you're talking to, but you're looking at the camera. Because when you're looking at the screen, it looks like you're looking at your phone, they said. Anyways, the piece of advice was to make sure you're looking at the camera and imagine like those are their eyes, because that's the only way they're gonna see.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like, when are you done with your interviews, Malik? You're done with them, or you still got to do the,
No, I'm done with it.
okay. Were they Zoom interviews?
Yeah, they were.
Okay, why don't you guys do yourself a favor? It's probably gonna be a 5-minute read. Look up etiquette Zoom. Like when you're talking a Zoom call, there's things you're supposed to do and things you're not supposed to do. And maybe a lot of you already know this. I mean, I don't know it. But I think so much stuff happens in Zoom, and that's one of them. But there's a lot of other stuff in terms of how you look in person and how you look on computers, two different things. And when something like, what's the background? You know, there's all that stuff, there's rules. So I think that's a really good point here. In today's environment, there's articles that'll take you 2 minutes to read. Just give you clues, and that's one of them about how to handle Zoom. So, I'm stopping. I got to take another 5 minutes. I'm going to stop. Any questions on what we talked about before? You guys cool? My man back there, my marketing man?
Somebody just said something.
Okay, question online? Go ahead.
I have to click on it.
What's that?
They asked what they were. I think they just got confused.
No, they got confused.
Okay, so let me guys, if you got questions, we'll talk next week and we'll finish it up. And that's it. So have a good one. Wish you luck and idle.
Hard, Des Moines.
No, see.